This is the Aftermarket Radio Network. Carm Capriato, the pioneer of automotive aftermarket podcasts. Hey, welcome. How are you? Hey, thanks for tuning in and joining my mission with you to advance the aftermarket. We do this together. Hey, don't forget to connect with me on social media and my Carm Capriato YouTube page. You can also email me, carm@remarkableresults.biz. Hey, I'd love to hear from you. Hey, how did you develop your hiring process? Did you learn from other colleagues? Did you look online? Do you make decisions based on your intuition? Do you cross your fingers and hope for the best because you're desperate to fill a position? Well, it's time to take proven methods and guidance with Maylan Newton's book, The Joy of Hiring. You'll also hear from a shop owner that implemented the concepts from this book into her hiring routine. She says it has completely changed her process and improved her hiring skills. Thanks to our partners Apex and Shopware for providing you this episode. You know, Apex 2022 will again feature Repair Shop HQ with you in mind. That's right, this one-stop destination is to meet the product, equipment, and training needs of shop owners, managers, and technicians all across North America. It's all happening at Apex 2022, November 1st through the 3rd in Las Vegas. Plan on being there and listen here for registration information. It's coming up. And when was the last time you ordered something online, like a burger from Grubhub, maybe your groceries from Amazon? Well, how about things that are really high-tech, like auto repair? Shopware's online interactive repair orders lets you do just that. Check it out for yourself on the web at getshopware.com. Hey, everybody, warm welcome to Maylan Newton, my friend out of CA, and that would be California from ESI, the Educational Seminars Institute, business coach, trainer, industry speaker. He's no stranger to the podcast, having paid it forward many, many times. Hey, man, what's going on?
Good morning. How are you?
I am great. Also with us is Samantha Tracy from Scotties Auto Repair, Riverside, California. Hello, Sam.
Hi, how are you?
We're great. Family business out in Riverside since 1991, and you joined the business in 2013, so you're really a veteran.
Yeah, I started here when I was 3, but I enjoy being here and looking to bring us to the next level.
So, you know, that's what happens with family businesses. Sam, what are you doing after school? I don't know, Dad. And so you were 3, you had no choice. You kind of were just hanging out, right?
Yep. I used to hang out, and my mom used to tell me that they would put chairs together so we could fall asleep while my dad was doing all the diagnostics on the cars. So it was a lot of fun, and actually started here when I was 16, but didn't plan on taking over the business until 2013.
And when you went there at 16, you said, I love the smell of tires in the morning, right?
Yeah, gear oil.
Exactly right. Oh, my God. Oh, gear oil. True. Hey, guys, we're here to talk about Maylan's book, The Joy of Hiring. I'm going to put it up in my frame right here. Congrats, by the way, Maylan, on writing this book and chatting with you about a whole bunch of stuff. I find out this is the first of many, or the second or the third of many, right?
The first of 3, we hope.
Very good. Excited about that. And part of why Sam is here, you know, Maylan, I says, you got a client or someone in the business that, you know, hiring wasn't their forte. I mean, my God, when you got into the business and even became, you know, a managing member of the family, Sam, I don't know if they sent you to school to learn how to be a hirer or sent you to HR lawyer school or all that stuff. And in part of what we want to talk about is taking the emotion out of hiring. And that was a really big component for you, wasn't it?
That is absolutely true. You think about owning a business, you think about coming in, and what do we know how to do? We know how to work on cars. We know how to deal with customers and taking care of the customer. But what you forget about is you are that lawyer, you are that hirer and that motivator to the people that come into your business with you. And there's no training for it. There's no, this is what you need to do and how you need to do it. You have, mom or dad or the person that was with you before saying, okay, this is what I did and it kind of worked. And you get into that mode of, I need a warm body. I need somebody who knows how to drive a car and can possibly change oil, and didn't really know where to go from there. And really got excited when I got handed this book from Maylan that he wrote, and it was able to put a process in place to hire that new person.
Well, thanks for confirming many of the things, Maylan, that we all know is, we know how to turn wrenches, satisfy people, fix cars, and then we say, we got a business here. And so we go out on the counter, hire our replacement, and, we know the story. It's been told over and over again. But then that hiring, that marketing, that finance, that accounting whole piece starts crashing down. And Maylan, hiring seems to be one of the most important and the most critical from a legality standpoint of anything that you can get help with or learn more about.
Well, you're absolutely correct. The wrong hire costs you in multiple ways. Not only does it cost you in production and comebacks and angry customers, damages your reputation, but it puts you in a bad legal position because the more people you hire and fire, the odds are against you that somebody's going to file some kind of wrongful termination lawsuit or some kind of I was discriminated against lawsuit. So, the reason the book was written is because I spent so much time with our clients talking about the idea of hiring people to teach them. I finally decided it would be easier to try to put all these random kind of helter-skelter processes that we all go through down into a more, as we put it in the book, a more scientific format, as opposed to a more abstract format, to try to get a process and procedure going to help stop us from making emotional and desperation hires, which cost us way too much money.
We tell, and in fact, you cover it in the book, that we should always be hiring. I love you brought up the unicorn thing in the book. And, we're always looking for that, if you will, outstanding, exceptional individual. And you can never find that person if you don't have a perpetual commitment to be looking.
Well, that's the emotional part of it, because if the right person walks through your door and you have a full staff, but that exceptional, the unicorn, walks through your door and you go, I'd love to hire you, but I don't have a spot for you. That person will never be back, or that person with that skill set will never be back. So you have to adapt the hardcore business philosophy of fire the weakest link and replace them. And that's a very difficult concept because we also become friends with our employees. And, Karma, I'll share a little story. I went in and did some consulting in a shop. You had 6 employees and they were producing the work of 3. So 2 service writers, 6 technicians, and they were producing the work of 3. And when I explained to him, he needed to let 3 of his technicians go and one of the service writers go because he would actually make more money. His answer to me was, I can't do that. These people are my friends. And that's why the emotional part of running a business, not just the hiring, but running a business hurts us. And I come along and I'm the cold, calloused, you can fill in the blank from that. And I'm talking about fire your weakest link and replace them with somebody stronger and not be friends with your employees. Be their boss. And that's hard for people.
There's a lot of people out there that are really working very hard and forming strong cultures in their business to probably have an exception with that coldness. But there is a very important line that you just don't cross. You could help people with all kinds of great things in their world and in their life, in their business environment, and time off and vacations and in training, but don't cross that particular line because you never know, someone may fall from grace.
When I fire somebody, it's not a surprise because the culture in the shop should be, here are the expectations, and we talk about this, here are the expectations. You're not meeting the expectations. How are we going to fix that? How can I help you achieve success? And if they don't achieve success and we have repetitive conversations about it, then that's their choice not to step up to the plate. So it's not a cold, callous, I just fire people on a whim. I will make sure you're on thin ice before it comes down to that. So somewhere out there, you got to take responsibility for your own actions.
Totally agree. I've been there and done that when someone says, are you kidding me? What's going on? Realizing that I did a really poor job of trying to get this person to advance inside the business, looked at their behaviors that were affecting the business. And, in my younger days, and so many young people, they just fire people. They're scratching their head. They walk out with their toolbox. They don't have a clue. and it was leadership that failed them. Sam, experience like that ever?
Yeah, I completely understand being friends with the employees, being such a small business and only having 3 employees. It's hard not to become emotionally attached with them. But I completely see where Maylan's coming from on the aspect of this is a business and we're all here to make sure that our customers' cars are running well and produce what we need to produce to stay afloat. And if you're not producing what you need, then they do need to be let go. They do need to have that process, but it's not a surprise. It is a process that in Maylan's book that he wrote, The Joys of Hiring, it also comes along with the follow-up process, holding them accountable to the expectations that you set during that interview process.
We hire too quickly, Maylan, you write in the book, and we fire too slowly.
Because we make an emotional hire. And pretty much we teasingly say this, and I'm not the only person that said this, is our hiring criteria is, do you have tools? Can you fog the mirror? Can you start today? That's pretty much the interview process. They're just looking for a body with tools. And the person comes in and they're not capable of doing the job at the level we hoped. Because one of the biggest problems is the interview process, we don't find out what they can do. So they come in, they don't do the work at the level we need them to. They're not as skilled as we want. They talk the talk, but they can't walk the walk, let's say. They become Klingons. They hang on, and we're afraid to get rid of them. So instead of terminating that person and realizing I made a mistake in 30 days, it goes 30 months. And in that amount of time, they've cost us tens of thousands of dollars in customer issues, comebacks. We've angered customers. We've lost people. We've damaged our reputation, which is priceless. And that's why we need to hire the right person, take more time to hire the right person so we have less that we need to terminate or fire. And if we find out that somehow this person slipped through the cracks and we hired the wrong person, you got to stop the pain early. Otherwise, you'll bleed to death.
I should have done this in the beginning of this episode. Where do we get this book?
That's a good question, Carm. I'm glad you finally asked it.
Maybe you don't have an answer for that.
I have an answer for that. The book, you can buy the book on Amazon. Just search The Joy of Hiring, or you can go to thejoyofhiring.com, which is the website for the book. And there's a link to go to Amazon and buy it.
I'll make sure the link is in the show notes and people have access to that. Everyone, it's a very succinct, short read, but very powerful. You know, Maylan, I can't tell you how you put so much into, God, how many pages? 70-some pages. And type is really big for a person that it's just great. And the resources, oh my God, he's got a special link there for resources. And that resources download is worth the price of admission, man.
Absolutely. And I do want to praise Cassidy, who is the editor of the book. And she was able to take all the stuff that rummages around my head and made it read properly. And then Bertie, who is also editing the book and helped me go through the book to make it make sense, because I've done this for so long that I read the book and I leave out words and I miss things that should be in the book because I already know what I was going to say. But, the key to this is I was trying to get my 40 years worth of doing this into a written form to where everybody could use the resources. So it's a short read, but it has a lot of powerful information. And then there's a link in there to the resource page on the website that you can only get through the book that gives you a lot of the tools we talk about, such as testing and a better interview process, interview questions, just all kinds of help to help you do the job, because we weren't taught this. I wasn't taught it. I had to learn it. That on-the-job training is very expensive.
Well, the assessments, the job descriptions, So jam-packed and great places to start. I just warn anybody, and I know you would, you can't copy someone's stuff and make it your own. You can copy it, use it as a template, but you ultimately have to make it your own based on, your uniquenesses in your business. Listen, I've hired people, and then I don't know, I would maybe go down to the local church and light a candle and hope that I didn't hire the wrong person, but mainly that I hired the right person. And I think this book really helps set up that major worry almost every one of us has. And Sam, you could probably sit there and shake your head and say, been there, done that, right?
Been there, done that. And I think that my biggest outtake on the book was, man, if I would have read this book before I hired that guy, I would not have hired that guy. Can't tell you, I've had two of those. And since then, I've not hired those types of people, not because of the type of person they are, but because of what they're actually telling you in the interview process that you didn't realize they were telling you because you weren't paying attention to their body language or how they were answering the questions, or not even providing them with the skills test. Like, hello, they're here to do a very skillful job. Why are we not testing these things?
I love that part in the resources where the questions to ask and the questions not to ask. And I don't know, there were 100 and some questions to ask. I mean, Maylan, you hit a home run. But when we hire the wrong person, Sam, and I think you know this, our morale suffers, productivity suffers. I mean, it may not day one because we're all excited. We finally got someone to help us. And then sooner or later, if you don't have the right mechanism set up for watching this individual progress or to live within the values of the standards of the company, then you can always look back to that day that you both said yes and realize that was another one of those big mistakes and learning curves in my life that I have to attempt to overcome.
Well, and you got to remember too, and I think Sam experienced this, was it costs money to fire somebody because sometimes you have to get the legal guys involved in it.
Absolutely.
So it's a lot cheaper to hire the right guy the first time, or what you feel is the right person the first time. Not every state is as litigative as California is, but they're getting that way. Really what I tried to do in writing this book was cut down on my workload, to be honest with you.
Oh, that's really good. Yeah, that's
because I talk about this almost every day with multiple clients, and then I have to convince them to fire people and try to do it properly. And just like we hire emotionally, we fire emotionally. We have this huge can of worms that we open up, and 99% of us hire out of that desperation mode. So we're trying to eliminate that. That's the whole purpose of the book, was to try to get people to put this into a process that's repeatable and teachable. As their business grows, they can have somebody else do the hiring and still get the better results. Let's put it that way.
Carm here, and coming up, find out how important body language is during an interview. How much are you taking notice? Repair Shop HQ was a resounding success at Apex, and it will get even bigger and better in 2022. This special area is for service professionals, your own place while at Apex. A one-stop shop for all your service and repair needs, including technical and management classes taught by the industry's most sought-after and experienced trainers. The important classes and instructors are selected by a panel of shop owners and technicians to be on target with what you need to drive your business forward. There will also be hands-on product demos in Joe's Garage, a simulated shop environment with 10 service bays, lifts, and running vehicles. Plus, you'll get to see new tools and equipment, the latest in management and marketing tools, and dedicated sections for tires, alternative fuels, diagnostics, and telematics. If you experienced Repair Shop HQ last year, you'll get even more in 2022. Listen here for the latest information on Apex, November 1st through the 3rd, 2022. Hey, for more information, visit aapexshow.com. The automotive industry is blazing through with so many twists and turns and changes. Careful not to crash. Yet amidst it all, the demand for repair is a constant. So the questions remain, will repair shops adapt or die? Well, our friends at Shopware Shop Management Software get it. Their CEO is a shop owner. They understand what it takes to repair cars, and they're ready for the next big thing in automotive. Shopware tailors mainstream web-based technology to the needs of the industry's leading repair shops. You can run entirely digital, phone optional, and paper-free. Interactive online repair orders will not only meet the needs of contemporary drivers, but they are blown away by the experience. Connecting the aftermarket together, Shopware's ecosystem enables next-generation shop efficiency and customer satisfaction without compromise. Full service onboarding and best-in-class support provide everything a shop needs to transform its business and stay competitive long into the future. Enjoy more accurate quotes, more profitable jobs, busier technicians, and of course, happier customers. On the web at getshopware.com. When you do due diligence on a new client, Maylan, how heavy do you get into their HR process? Every client needs help in different ways. They wouldn't come to a coach if they didn't want to seek betterment. And do you, as you said, I wrote the book so that I don't have to work so hard on the HR side. You know, job descriptions, having an employee manual that describes all this stuff. Do you see many new clients lack in that area?
Most do. You know, I think that's a problem with our industry, is myself included. We like fixing cars. You know, it's kind of funny. Sam was talking about being at the shop and putting two chairs together so they could sleep. My daughter used to sleep in the race car inside the roll cage in the dragster while I worked. That was me spending time with her. She'd get in there and she'd play and fall asleep. We grew up because we loved cars, and we went into this, you know, entrepreneurial seizure and opened a business. And we still think it's about cars. So things that involve an employee manual and job descriptions and expectations, we don't like that stuff. We want to fix cars. Come on, Maylan, I just want to fix cars. But it's so important in today's world to have a set of rules of how we operate, and to have, this is what your job is, and this is your area of responsibility. And I know that the idea of holding people accountable is the last thing most people want to do, but that's the reason why we're not as successful as we should be.
You brought a lot of quotes. I really love you. You had a lot of great Steve Jobs quotes. You had one from Simon Sinek, and this was the quote: "You don't hire for skills, you hire for attitude." It's kind of the opposite in what we usually do, right?
You know, one of my favorite sayings is hire for attitude and train for aptitude. You've had a couple people on your podcast that I've hired that had no automotive knowledge at the service counter, and one of them now owns a business. She owns the repair shop that she wrote service in. So the technician side of it's a little different, but I don't care how good a technician you are. You could be a genius technician, but if you don't have a good attitude, you're not going to survive. You're going to create problems in the shop that, you know, you talked about culture. That's not the culture of most shops. Although in the technical side, I'm looking for aptitude. If they give me I'm an egotistical person, they're not going to fit the culture of the shop, I won't hire them. I don't care how good a technician they are.
So, Sam, you read the book, and did you realize that you had a lot of work to do to create the processes, the hiring system ahead of you? And I know it's been a short time since you've been a client of Maylan's. How are you doing with that, if that's the case?
I read the book, and then next to the book, I had a notepad where I was going through and notating what I needed to work on, what I needed to fix, and started from rewriting our job description, because I had a job description, but I didn't have expectations on it and different pieces that he talks about in the book. So I basically started with redoing and resetting up my entire process for the interview. The first thing that a person comes to me, I hand them their job description. Is this job something you feel that you'd be good at? Can you do all these things? Can you work on these types of cars and do these types of jobs? Then I move into the skills test, because what I found is a lot of people say they can do what they cannot do. And you don't know that until you put them into the job position. So that's when we take this skills test, and it's not really a pass fail. It's more of I'm looking for this type of person, and this type of person should be able to answer these types of questions. That's really helped out a lot in weeding out the people who are good. And you always hire the nice guy or the nice person. And it's allowed me to have a balance and consistency of expectation in job and skill, and then in reading their body language. And that to me was worth the entire book of those three things.
There's something big, body language. Wow. Your parents still in the business, right?
Yes and no. So in the sense of hiring and firing, it's just me.
All on your shoulders, huh?
Yeah. My dad still works in the business, and we're working on getting him to retirement phase. My mom has successfully stepped away from the day-to-days base, and I take care of the day-to-day stuff. And she works more from home doing the accounting stuff. The
thing I loved about the book as I was reading it is it really was like almost like a how-to encyclopedia, Maylan, the importance of a job description. And then you refine it. You just didn't say, hey, here's a paragraph on JDs. You went through to say, define the necessary skill set, define personal attributes. I mean, my notes that I took out of that book were minimum qualifications, minimum performance, physical requirements. How many job descriptions talk about what you have to lift and how you have to lift it and how you have to be on your feet? And we miss on that stuff. And so there's where the legal problems come in, right?
And that's the part that most of us miss because we're good technicians, right? We just do it. I had a client up in Central California that actually had a blind technician that worked for him. And he was a full-on technician. And the state of California actually provided a person to be his eyes, but he did the work. I myself, at a shop that I managed, I had a paraplegic in a wheelchair. And this guy could do everything. He even one day road tested a car, even though he wasn't supposed to, and which was quite a shock to watch him drive out. He just got tired of waiting for us. He was a very motivated young man, and he was tired of waiting for somebody to road test a car for him. But see, here's the problem you run into, is if you don't have the idea that they're going to lift and have to touch, see, feel, smell, whatever it is, you can actually be sued for discrimination, and that's 50 states. You didn't hire this person because of a handicap. That's discriminatory hiring. You need to have something that says you need to do these things. Doesn't mean you can't make exceptions, but you need to have it to where you can prove that this was a requirement of the job. And of course, throughout the book, which nobody's been kind enough to mention, is we repeat repeatedly that everything you do has to be checked by a labor law attorney because every state's different and the laws change so drastically.
A lot of shop owners that I know that they have some kind of access, if you will, Maylan, to people in their state to run issues by. You cannot DIY HR. That's my point.
No, and see, I want you to have a relationship with that attorney. I don't want it to be every time I get stuck, I have to call them. I want them to understand your business. I want them to understand what you're trying to accomplish in your business so they can be the best help for you. And you might need to have two different attorneys, one that handles business or property issues, and then you need somebody well-versed in HR in your state. What's legal in one state isn't legal in the state that's across the street, Although I've tried to cover the bases and be as center of the road as possible, everything needs to be checked. And what's really interesting, Carm, is when you hand an applicant a job description, a math test, a skills test, an expectations sheet, what does that tell that applicant about you and your business?
Well, if it scares them away right away, then good for you, right?
And I've
actually had that in an interview recently where, I handed this information to that prospective applicant, and 5 minutes later, he comes out of my office and said, "Thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for taking me into consideration, but I'm not what you're looking for. I can't do any of this stuff." And I respected him after that. It was pretty awesome.
Can't or won't, Maylan?
Maybe it's can't and maybe it's won't. See, that's where personalities enter into this, right? One of the things that I get told a lot whenever I'm involved in the hiring process is that you guys are the only people that did this. Mm-hmm. You have structure. It sets the tone for the whole business. It says we are not a little business. And I want us to be little businesses with sometimes large company structure, if you will. But it sets the tone that there's rules here and there's process, there's procedures. This is not a fly-by-night, seat of your pants, do what feels good today kind of place. So it kind of sets the tone. And I've had more than one person I've actually handed a clipboard with all of those things onto it, ask them to sit down. And by the way, Carm, I want them to do it in front of me. I want to know they filled it out.
Yeah. Let me take this home and get back to you. We don't do it like that.
Well, I had a technician bring one of them. He said, I went out to my car and filled this out. I had watched him walk out to his car, and I knew there was somebody else in the car, but every I was dotted with a heart. So I'm not saying anything, kind of an idea that he didn't fill that out. So I can't tell if they can read and write. I can't tell if their writing is legible. Do they understand the questions? So we had one guy that we handed everything to. He sat down, he looked at it and goes, you really want me to fill all this crap out? And I said, yes. He goes, I don't need a job this bad. And the owner was distraught because the desperation mode. And I said, he just saved you aggravation. That's not your employee.
There's a section in the book, it starts on page 25. A handful of sample questions you may want to ask an applicant. And I'm not going to read them, but these are some of the best that I've seen. And I've probably used a whole bunch of these myself. I'm not trying to sell the book, but just get the book and write these down and become better. It's the joy of hiring, but part of, I think, the unwritten storyline here, Maylan, is to become a better interviewer yourself.
The process of interviewing is not given the weight it should. It's just like doing this podcast, Carm. If we couldn't look each other in the face and see the body language, if you will, the podcast would be different.
Oh, I know. Trust me. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
The most important part, because they can write anything they want, but when you look a person in the eye and you ask them a question, you can tell when they're thinking of what's the right answer to give, or they're making the answer up as they go. You can see this in most people. Just the way they come in and sit down in the chair tells you if they're egotistical in a lot of cases, or overconfident, or respectful. I mean, there's so much stuff that goes unspoken. It's the visual part of it, and it's the conversation. And we don't put enough weight into that.
When I first started 6 years ago, Maylan, I could have done phone interviews. You hear that on talk radio all the time, where the individual is talking to the talk show host over the phone, and people says, "Listen, I don't want to do a Zoom call. I don't want to be face to face. I says, "Okay, thanks. When you are ready, let me know, because this is what I really want to do, because the face to face, the body language is critical." And I think that has really helped in building this very influential brand and podcast with 1,000+ episodes out there that people just gravitate to. And, it's kind of, if you will, a secret to personal networking. People can get a lot of great information. What opportunities can thousands of people listen to Maylan talk about hiring, buy the book or not, get motivated by it. And the show comes off better, Maylan, because we were looking at each other. And Sam, to meet you and to see you and to watch your eyebrows go up and your hands on your cheeks and your hand on your face, I know that you have a story to tell, or you've been so affected by this that it has made you a better person. For people that just can't or don't want to do a Zoom call with you, even if it's the initial interview, listen, let's just have a look-see. Let's get on a Zoom call, and they can't. You can get on a Zoom call with your phone today. And who doesn't have one of those, right? Especially if, for example, they are 100 miles away and they're getting ready to move into your town. Oh, let me see. I'm going to go to work for the Department of Transportation to bring my tools. They're going to want to see you face to face. And so I don't think we should lower our standards. That's my point.
And the next version of the book we're going to add to it is one of the most important questions you should ask is, how big is your toolbox? Because we need to make sure we have room in the shop for it. Because I know people that have, hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of tools that can't fix anything. And then I have people that have, the small toolbox that they know how to use, everything in it, and they make you money. You know what? That's perception we have. I actually ask technicians, what is the value of your tools? And I can tell you 99% of them will tell you a single number. How about this? What's your most valuable tool in your toolbox? Boy, that messes people up.
My scanner.
Yeah, a good diagnostician is going to say, there's nothing but, I take my scanner everywhere. They say.
That's not a right or wrong answer, right? So what if the guy or the technician, male or female, looks you in the eye and goes, my brain? They're telling you that they're thinkers, right? If somebody tells you it's my hammer, they're probably not a diagnostician.
I love the brain answer, by the way. If that's true, they say the brain, this is okay, well, great, then you're going to love our training commitment that we're going to provide you. What a great offshoot to talk about culture and the things you expect from them. Hey, Sam, don't mean to change the subject, but did you learn anything from the book as to what questions not to ask or some really good questions to ask? Did you change since you've done this?
Yes, I have changed since I started this process. In fact, 100% of everything I did changed because of this book. One of the biggest things for me was having to limit the amount of questions I'm asking, because I'm like, I want to ask all the questions in the world. And you can't do that. Otherwise, they'd be here for like 5 hours. So I've actually narrowed down my interview process to about 2 hours between all the testing and the questions that I ask. The biggest thing that changed was the skills test. Talking a couple scenarios through how to fill out the paperwork. Because here in California, everybody's too happy, whether it be an employee or a customer. To me, talking a lot about the scenarios and how they document paperwork. Do they even know about the bar laws in California? 9 times out of 10, they don't even know what that is.
Sam, give me one thing that you did that improved yourself as an interviewer.
For me, taking the emotion out of it, and I know we've already talked about that, that was huge to me because I always want to just get somebody started, get the process going. Being able to take emotion out of a lot of my decision-making, not just hiring, but I've taken that aspect of what I've learned and put it into play in just my day-to-day business process. And that has made a huge impact on running the business.
Do you make an offer to a candidate once you've gone through the process? Do you just pick up the phone and says, hey, listen, I want to, everything we talked about, come on to work for me? Is it phone? Is it in person? What's the best way to do it?
Well, one of the things I talk about in the book, I rarely offer them a job at the end of the interview. I want to have time to think about it. But in today's kind of frenzy to hire, that person may have 5 job offers already. That's a personal choice you have to make. I like to talk with them. I'm either going to call them on the phone or I'm going to ask them to come back down to the shop. And then I'm going to offer them the job. Here, I want you to come to work for us. Here's what we can do. When can you start? Kind of scenario. But that's, again, this is a fluid situation. So if somebody comes in and I think I have the unicorn sitting in front of me, I'm prepared to offer them a job.
And and you believe you have the unicorn in front of you because, as Sam says, you've gone through the 2-hour process. You've seen the assessments. You're compiling all of this in your mind as you go through this, which is why in certain instances you would make an offer on the first date. Is that what you're saying?
I would. Now, for Sam, for example, what I would want Sam to do is instruct the person she's interviewing that her business coach is going to call and talk to her, to that applicant. And I'm going to call and ask my silly questions and maybe the same questions. And then I'm going to assess that person from my experience. And then I'm going to call Sam and say, here's what I heard. Here's what I think.
Does that align with you and your think? If we're feeling both really good on it, then Sam, throw your gut into this thing, your intuition, how it fits in the company, and make your decision. There's still always a risk.
Absolutely. Nobody's perfect, right? We're just trying to narrow down the gap between perfection and anarchy of hiring the wrong person.
Sam, any final words?
This book is created its own process within itself to make sure that not only are you treating every applicant the same, you're asking them the same questions. By the time you finish reading the book, you start the process of fixing your process and what you want to do, how you want to do it. It allows you to have that consistency. And the consistency in the process, for me, is what has allowed me to have that decision by the end of the interview, whether or not I want to hire this person, because I've interviewed other people. I always go through the same process. I can really make a final decision at the end of that interview that whether I feel this person would make a good fit to my team or not. I still use Maylan as my business coach to help do a phone interview at the end. If I feel confident that this person would be a good person in my team, I send them to him. And I think out of all the people that I've sent to him, there's only been one person that he goes, you probably should pass on this one. But everybody else, we've gotten to a point where I've made those good decisions in the process.
Some of the bigger companies, a little bigger than yours, Sam, they may have maybe they have a GM, maybe they have a shop foreman. I've heard so many stories about go in and work with the team for a few hours. Maylan, are you a huge believer in multiple looks at a candidate?
I like to have more than one person interview. I have a lot of my clients, actually, if they're hiring a technician, the technicians take that person out to lunch as part of the interview process. What you got to make sure you teach your employees what they can and can't ask, because there's legal ramifications. But it gives them an idea of this person in a personality state of whether they're going to get along with each other, because they work so close together. More interviewing, better, but then we run this out to where we can't take 3 weeks to make a decision.
So many great companies say, look, agree or disagree, I'll make the final decision, and we have to be united behind this candidate. We have to give this candidate the best possible opportunity, since we found so many great positives. And, you may have said that this one negative is bigger for you than it is for someone else. We all have positives, we all have negatives, and we're all dealing with each other's strengths and or weaknesses, all working toward becoming better at what we do. If you will, a group hire, and where everybody understanding, what the risk is, but the owner or whoever the hiring person is, has got to accept the responsibility to make the decision and then to carry that person through the culture of the company.
That's what it boils down to is, I tell clients all the time, we're gonna run the business as a democracy. Everybody's going to have a say, but at some point in time, somebody's going to have to be the dictator, typically the owner. Sometimes it's me, the coach, that says, I listen to all of you, but here's the decision. And that's kind of where, when you have a group hiring process, somebody's got to be the final say. Depending on the position, I think the technicians have a lot of weight. If they're going to be a front counter person, then, the customer service staff has a lot of weight. If there's multiple service writers, if they're going to be a manager, then the owner's going to have a lot more say into it because of the responsibilities that go with that. So a lot of it depends on who you're interviewing, what you're interviewing for. Henry Ford used to take his managers out to dinner. He watched them very intently, that body language thing again. And if they seasoned their food before they tasted it, he wouldn't even hire them at that point. His philosophy was, if you just automatically season your food without tasting it, you're a creature of habit, and you're going to do that in my business. So again, it's your philosophy of this.
I'm going to end the show by telling you a really very simple and easy story I've never probably told to but 3 people in my whole life, and that is back when I was interviewing for this VP of marketing job, they took me out to lunch, and I got back. I got the job, by the way. And what I did is I said, okay, let me see how you based your decision on. I'd love to learn. What did you guys learn at lunch? And they said that you had a cold and you chewed with your mouth open. We did not like that. To this day, 30 years or so, 25 years later, I remember that story. So, oh my God. Hey, great book, Joy of Hiring, joyofhiring.com. How'd you get that URL? I mean, that is really cool.
I learned a valuable lesson. I own a lot of URLs because when the idea pops in my head, I buy it.
You buy them. All right. Okay, cool. You're like me. I got a bunch too. Good to have you here, Maylan Newton from ESI Educational Seminars Institute, business coach, trainer, industry speaker. Samantha, Tracy, Scotties Auto Repair, Riverside, California. This was great. Thank you so much for helping all of us realize that we could be better at hiring and enjoy it.
As always, Carmen, I appreciate you taking the time to talk about this and letting us share our knowledge. It's interesting. I'll share this with you real quick, because the reason I wrote this book and the reason there's more books in the works is it all came from my motorcycle accident and stroke. While I was in the hospital, my brother and I were talking. He was actually teaching me how to tell time again. And he says, we need to get all that stuff that's in your head rattling around there and get it down onto paper. It's been just past 7 years since the accident happened. And so this is the first of 3 that's going to be coming out of basically that stay in the hospital. So even good things come out of bad things. Hopefully, November of 22, we'll be releasing the book, The Joy of Auto Repair, which will be a synopsis of 40 years of being in the industry. And then after that, don't have a date for this yet, we're going to be writing a book about the catastrophic failure of me, which we've talked about on your show. But I think that would be a great inspirational story to not just our industry, but to a lot of people. So
no doubt, no doubt. Hey, listen, I'm honored to have both of you here. Appreciate it. And thanks for your support of the show and for all you do for the industry, guys. Thanks.
Thank you, Carm.
Thank you.
Thanks for being on board to listen and learn from the premier automotive aftermarket podcast. Until next time.